Hello and welcome back to Between the 20s. We are very excited today to be bringing you our first installment. We're a week late, granted, but our first installment of Start Sit in 2021, where we try to get to the bottom of our listeners' most burning fantasy questions. Who should they start? Who should they sit? This week, week 2, coming at you right now. But before we get into it, I'm joined as always by Amer and Bryce. Amer, how are you doing?
I'm good. We're all in the same state now again, but not quite in the same.
No. Tri-state area.
Location.
Tri-state area. We have a Jersey. We have a.
Oh, he is in Jersey. Oh man.
Tom Waits.
No
Tom
problem.
Waits says Jersey girl, but we have a Jersey boy.
No problem. Never mind.
Is that Frankie Valli over there? But yeah, Bryce, how are you doing?
I'm good. As Amer said, I am back in New Jersey visiting some family for the holidays. This is our big time. So back up seeing some guys. But as always, got to watch the Giants lose on Thursday night. So who doesn't love that?
Yes. The Giants with a disappointing loss. Of course, everybody knows that there was a missed field goal at the end of the game. The Giants were up 2 points. They thought they had won it. But alas, Damian Harrison, right? Do I have that right?
That's not even close. Dexter Lawrence.
Dexter Lawrence.
Damian Harris currently plays for the Patriots.
For the Patriots. Oh no, I was thinking about Snacks. I apologize. Snacks was
Snacks Harrison.
Who's also now in Detroit.
He's not on the team, right? Okay, all right. But they're big defensive line.
Actually, Mike, he might be out of the league.
Wow.
Couple swings and misses from Mike, no problem. Nothing like a good old podcast.
Par for the course.
So who wouldn't you trust in a start sit, or why wouldn't you trust me in a start sit episode tonight? Fantasy football, you just need to know the general strength of the defense you're playing against, but it's all the offensive guys which you need to know. So we'll get started. So we have 2 wide receiver specific questions and then 2 pick'em questions. A little bit more flex oriented. So we're going to start with a simple one. I have a pick one of 3 guys in a half PPR league. And we're going to be picking here between Mike Davis, who I was reminded today is on the Falcons now. He's playing at Tampa Bay. Tim Patrick, who now reemerges as a relevant fantasy option with Jerry Jeudy sidelined with what appeared to be a nasty ankle injury. Tim Patrick is playing at Jacksonville. And finally, we have Michael Pittman of the Colts playing against the Los Angeles Rams at home. Of course, Carson Wentz is now the quarterback there in Indianapolis. So a little bit of intrigue there. Amer, who do you like of these 3?
Yeah, so we're back to the old questions of running backs versus wide receivers. And if we're going to look at these 3, I think clearly the bottom guy here is Michael Pittman. He didn't really produce last week, although he had some high expectations. With no T.Y. Hilton, but it seems like Zach Pascal maybe moved into that wide receiver 1 role when Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor both got a ton of receiving work. So tough to play Pittman. I'd still stash him, keep him on your bench for a little bit, but definitely not a start this week. And then it comes down to running back versus wide receiver. Mike Davis, you get the guaranteed touches. Mike's a big guaranteed touch guy. He's all about that. Big Carlos Hyde guy back in the day. Versus Tim Patrick, who had a good week last week and now is in line to see a lot more work. So this is an interesting question, and especially in a half PPR. It's kind of a toss-up between the positions. But I think I'm going to go with Tim Patrick this week. I just think that the matchup is tasty. That's a great word for that. The Jags are horrible this year. Denver is playing against the Jags this week. They had a good week last week against the Giants, who actually have a pretty solid defense. The Jags are nowhere close to that. So I like Tim Patrick this week, and I think he can get it done. He can get some good receptions, and he's got a shot for a touchdown.
All right, with that, we turn to our Jersey boy, Bryce. Who do you like in these 3?
Yeah, I agree, Amer, basically with everything you said. Pittman's at the bottom. I do want to say, though, I'm not ready to buy into Zach Pascal yet. I still think Michael Pittman is the number 1 receiver on this team, and he's an exceptional stash. So do not give up. I want to do that. Make that PSA real quick because he should be on your team and rostered if you drafted him. Actually, maybe a decent trade target as well. But Amer, you brought up matchups, and I think that's a great point. You talked about the Jacksonville matchup, exceptional for Tim Patrick. Absolutely. He had 5 targets, 4 catches against the Giants. For me, it's actually more about just how brutal of a matchup Tampa Bay is for opposing running backs. They bottled up Ezekiel Elliott, who's a top 5 talent at the running back position. Mike Davis isn't even close to that kind of talent. The Falcon offense is anemic. It looked terrible against Philadelphia. I don't see any way Mike Davis tops 40 yards, and that's only if he gets an exceptional amount of touches. Half PPR, the receiving volume isn't even worth it. I would much rather just take a guy like Tim Patrick, know he's going to get 4, 5, 6 targets, hope he turns one into a long one or catches a touchdown like he did last week. It seemed that Teddy actually would like to look at him in the red zone, had a couple red zone targets, including the 1 touchdown. So I do like Tim Patrick. He was one of my top guys on the waiver wire this week. If you picked him up, I would start him in the situation.
There we go. All right. So I agree that Michael Pittman is sort of the least attractive of these 3 options for me. The Rams have a pretty good defense, and I don't know if I trust any one of those Colts receivers right now. So then it comes down to Mike Davis and Tim Patrick. I might have to disagree with my typical guaranteed touches here because the touches aren't guaranteed. I mean, when we're looking at this matchup, I think there's 2 things you really consider when you're making a start-sit decision. Or in terms of kind of a player's ability to perform in a given week, and that is both the opponent they're playing against and kind of those defensive tendencies, and the defensive tendencies, and then also kind of I'd say that's kind of 1, and then 2 is the game script. And I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to frankly destroy the Atlanta Falcons this coming week. And I know the Falcons will probably then kind of lean on the arm of Matt Ryan a little bit, lean off the rushing game. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Tim Patrick. So with that, now we're going to make our way into a wide receiver question. It's going to be simple. Pick one of 2 wide receivers in a PPR league. Juju Smith-Schuster playing versus the Las Vegas Raiders, or Antonio Brown playing versus the Atlanta Falcons. This is kind of the opposite of the Mike Davis matchup. Bryce, who are you taking?
To me, this one isn't even close. I'm going to take, irrespective of any format, I'm taking Antonio Brown in the situation. Both have remarkably similar situations, right? They're, I guess, in theory, the 3rd target of 3 receivers, but on 2 teams that play a lot of 3 receiver sets, be on the field a ton. Just look at what Antonio Brown did against the Cowboys. My goodness, it was only 4 catches. Yes, he was targeted a lot. He looked fast, quick, football ready, knew the offense, had some kind of rapport with Tom Brady. I think that he's set up to be maybe, a low end wide receiver 2 week in and week out if he can keep getting some sense of volume. On the other side, Juju Smith-Schuster, yes, there maybe is some floor there. He did have 8 targets last week against Buffalo. He's still the 3rd receiver on this team without the boom potential that Antonio Brown possesses, right? Juju is much more of that possession receiver, more of the slants, run across the middle. AB, even though he's the 3rd guy, Chris Godwin is the Juju Smith-Schuster on the Buccaneers. So you're looking at a guy with boom potential versus a guy that, I don't know, you might see 3 catches for 25, 30 yards. I don't want that. I'd rather take my shot here, especially when you're considering the rate that Tampa Bay is going to score against Atlanta. So for me, not even close. Doesn't matter about the format. It's Antonio Brown every time.
All right. Amir, do you agree?
Yeah, so I agree. I don't think I'm quite as strong on the AB train, but I do think he's the better play this week. Bryce kind of said it, similar situation, crowded wide receiver room for both of these teams. But the big difference here is really the offense of the Steelers versus the offense of the Bucks. Bucks have one of the best offenses in the NFL, of course. The Steelers really don't. They're really a defensive team. They're going to win a lot of games this season with their defense, not because of Big Ben or anybody else. This is not your slightly older brothers, Killer Bees, Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's why I choose AB. But I actually think that Juju represents a pretty good floor, pretty solid floor this week, and all weeks this season. I think the Bucks, as we saw last year, it's kind of easy for the Bucks some of them to disappear. You saw a lot of disappearing acts for Mike Evans or Chris Godwin last year, and especially with Gronk in there, there are 4 targets that Tom Brady can choose from. So You might see a disappearing act from Antonio Brown, but like Bryce said, the ceiling is unmatched in this case, and that's kind of why I'd go with AB. He could absolutely win you for week this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to agree with you guys. But I do agree that there's a little bit of concern as, someone who has Antonio Brown in one of my leagues. I feel that there is a bit of concern that that's a very busy receiving core. I mean, when you see someone as skilled as Mike Evans basically get shut out in a week, that kind of raises some eyebrows. And I think, that was also a very high scoring game where we saw Gronk put up 2 touchdowns. We had Antonio Brown score as well. If the Bucs are kind of locked into a bit more of a low scoring game, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen there. Obviously, I don't think it will be that against the horrendous Falcons. But I'm a little concerned about Antonio Brown going forward and the sustainability. But here I do like him as opposed to Juju Smith-Schuster, because honestly, you have the same problem in that Steelers offense where you don't know who's getting the ball on a given week. And you don't even know if they're going to be able to move the ball on a given week. And then if they do move it, who's going to get it? So I agree with Antonio Brown here. At least that offense is kind of much stronger, even though you're still dealing with kind of multiple wide receivers.
Before we move on, I actually have a quick question. I just want to do a quick poll. On these 2 teams, we have 6 fantasy viable receivers, right? Let's take AB and Juju out of the equation. They're more flex guys week to week. We're looking at Evans, Godwin, Claypool, and Deontay Johnson, who had a big week against Buffalo. Out of those 4 guys, not necessarily who's going to have the most points week over week, which of those 4 guys would you trust week to week in your lineup? Who's going to be the most consistent performer? Because as Mike said, one of these guys can disappear every single week just based on the volume and the issues. So I have an idea. I'm just curious about what you guys are thinking. Who's the safest option?
Yeah, I think the safest guy, I think it depends on the scoring system, scoring type. But I think it's Deontay Johnson. I think he just has a ton of volume and he's always going to get targeted. He's always going to be the guy that gets so many targets and so many receptions, no matter what. That I think he's probably the safest guy. I think he doesn't have the upside of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, or even Chase Claypool, who last year we saw explode several weeks. But I think if you're just looking for floor, you're looking for safety, I think Deontay Johnson's the guy.
Did you see how bad that Steelers offense was at the end of last year? Though it was like they were brutal. They could not move. And they couldn't get out of their own side of the field.
But a reception for 0 yards is still 1 point, Mike.
I can't agree with that. I'm going to take the hot take. I'm going with my man Mike Evans.
Of course.
I knew it.
Of course. The safest guy is Mike Evans. Okay, Mike. Sure, whatever you say.
I feel like Mike Evans. Mike Evans is my man in that.
Disappearing acts last week, Mike. He had some stinkers. He had some gooses last year.
You wait for him to come back. He's going to put up some big touchdowns coming down the. If you're targeting Gronk in the red zone, if they don't look to Gronk, who's their other big guy?
Antonio Brown.
Mike Evans. All right, now folks, get out of this. Bryce, who's your pick?
So that's actually why I wanted to ask this, because first of all, Mike, you're wrong. Amer, for me,
what else is new, my guy?
Because Amer, for me, the reason I wanted to ask was this was super tight for me between Godwin and Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like super tight. I agree with you. I think it's Deontay Johnson, just because using Mike's argument, Mike Evans can explode, as can Chase Claypool. But if Chase Claypool goes off, it's more likely that Deontay Johnson's also having a good game than it would be if Mike Evans commands 10 to 12 targets.
Right.
Godwin can just disappear. So I agree with you, but it is really tight. Week to week, I'd rather have Godwin on my team because I think he's a better player and has a better chance of scoring.
Agreed.
But Deontay Johnson, if I want safety, it's going to be Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, he had 140 something targets last year. That's elite. That's like wide receiver 1 level volume.
Yeah,
from a guy that you got in the 5th round this year. So,
all right. Now that apparently I'm wrong, we're gonna move on to some. Get out your pens and pencils, folks, because we got some big questions coming at you. We're picking between 4 guys in both of our 2 remaining questions. So the first one is a pick 2 in a PPR league. We have David Johnson playing at the Browns this week. Darnell Mooney versus Cincinnati. Trey Sermon at Philadelphia. Hopefully he's not, actually, hopefully he's actually active. And then Peyton Barber at the Steelers. Amir, will let you kick this one off.
Oh, so I'm going first. Okay, so we got to pick
Yes.
2 here. And what was the first name you mentioned?
David Johnson.
Oh, Lord. Okay. This is a tough question. I don't pity the guy whose team this is. Oh, man. So I think if we're looking at a full PPR league, I think you got to take the wide receiver. You got to take Darrell Mooney. I think the Bears didn't look great, to be honest, but he got a good number of targets. And I guess that'll continue. I guess he has some sort of volume that you can count on. And compared to these other guys, I don't know. I can't trust any of these other guys to get guaranteed touches, targets, nothing. So I'd lock in with Mooney. And I guess if you're going to take one of these running backs, it'd be David Johnson. The Texans are bad. Yeah. And they're probably going to get blown out by the Browns this weekend. This is a big line. I think it's double-digit point spread. So they're going to be catching up. They're going to be some garbage time. And I think David Johnson could potentially have some work in the passing game as the Texans are trying to claw their way back into this game. So I guess just these 2 guys, Mooney and David Johnson would be my 2 picks, although tough choice here.
Bryce, who do you like? Or who do you hate least?
I think it starts with Mooney. I actually do like Mooney. I think he's a target monster. He's kind of Allen Robinson light. He's the same player almost effectively. Starts with him, toss him into the flex here and run with it. Amir said it does provide you some semblance of floor. And then you're talking about 3 lottery tickets, right? David Johnson's going to be game script dependent. They're going to get blown out. He is the receiving back, right? I believe Philip Lindsay and Mark Ingram combined for 0 receptions, and David Johnson had 3. So if they're going to be in pass situations,
huge volume from David Johnson.
He's the guy.
Week.
Then you have Trey Sermon, which is just so unfortunate because he fell in the situation. It was perfect. Mostert, and it just doesn't play. So that one's listening to the chatter. If he's active, Shanahan said in practice that he looked determined and he looked really good. Maybe that's a vote of confidence, but Elijah Mitchell looked fantastic last week, over 100 yards rushing. So that's not something you can negate other than the fact it was against the Lions. Then you have Peyton Barber, the new entrant into the Las Vegas backfield because Josh Jacobs is out this week. It's a question mark. They have Kenny Drake there. Who knows what that usage is going to be? Drake's probably the guy they're going to run with. He was there in camp. It's a hard one. Because they come in with question marks, I think you go with David Johnson just because of the game script. And you know that he has a chance to have 4, 5, 6 catches where it's a shame for the guy that was RB1 5 years ago. He's now basically James White, or a bad version of James White.
On a worse team, yeah.
So it's probably David Johnson. If your team looks really good elsewhere. So I assume that it's either you're in a really bad injury situation at RB2 or you just punted the position. If it's the second case where you have like Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, your tight end, and guys like Keenan Allen and Tyreek Hill as your receivers, basically you've punted the running back position, play Trey Sermon. Because in that case, you're looking for a boom. Trey Sermon could end up with 10 rushes for 100 yards. It could absolutely happen. 100 all-purpose yards. So if you feel safe with the rest of your team, go Sermon. If you're playing him because you need points, I think it's David Johnson.
Because you need
Mike's
points.
thinking that one through.
You're
Bryce
needing
doesn't need points this
guaranteed
week.
points.
If you need a floor,
points.
if you need a floor,
I need points every week.
we know.
All right. I think this one's pretty simple. I'm not going to put in the guy who wasn't necessarily on the roster, started. He wasn't dressed last week. Unless I hear otherwise, he's kind of out of consideration. So Trey Sermon, thumbs down. And then Peyton Barber, I mean, what are we going to expect from him in Las Vegas? He's going to be the RB2 there? Like, no buzz on that. So I'm going to pick David Johnson, who, as we said, is the passing back in Houston. Hot take, David Johnson this week, more than double-digit fantasy points. Or double digit
Ooh.
Sorry,
fantasy
more than
points.
double digit.
Not more than double digits. Double digit fantasy points for David
Okay.
Johnson. And I'm going to go
Interesting.
with Darnell Mooney.
Does
as
9
well.
point, does like 2.1 count? 2 digits in decimal scoring. Does that count, Mike?
No, I'm telling you, David Johnson.
More than
above
10 points. Damn,
Above
okay.
10
So you
points.
guys,
Mike's
so you have
believing
David
in it.
Johnson finding the end zone again. That's the only way that happens.
No,
Unless
Bryce.
you think he's going to have 10 receptions.
Do the math, and he has 5 receptions. You're halfway there.
Halfway there.
All right, and now we have our final question. Once again, pens and pencils, folks. This is a wide receiver question for wide receivers. This person, my guess would be that this person kind of drafted running backs early or other skill positions, and her running backs early might have a very good quarterback, very strong tight end, and then kind of just picked a slew of wide receivers in the mid rounds, hoping to hit on someone. And
Just to hit the dart throw.
I'd say that, looking at some of these options, they play pretty well because this is their wide receiver question. They're looking between, I know, in a PPR league, Robbie Anderson, Marvin Jones, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle. Robbie Anderson is playing versus the Saints, Marvin Jones versus the Broncos, then Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle. Their Dolphins are taking on the Buffalo Bills. Bryce, who do you like amongst the slew of wide receivers?
Yeah, this isn't a bad selection of kind of the mid-tier lottery ticket type guys that still give you a little bit of floor. Something controversial here. I actually think I like Jalen Waddle in the situation. Jalen Waddle looked good last week, scored a touchdown, had over 5 targets, bunch of receptions. He looked great. Robbie Anderson, this team probably drafted as their wide receiver 2, their everyday wide receiver 2. He scared me last week against the Jets.
Who knows?
Wide receiver. Yeah, could be.
Against the Jets, he only hauls in one of his catches, one of his targets, does go for a touchdown on a 57-yard bomb, saved his day, right? He ends up with, in full PPR, 12.5 points. Good day. That's on one catch. He was out-targeted by Terrace Marshall. That scares me so much. Robbie Anderson, I have as a good trade candidate this week, right? You saw small targets. The touchdown saved him, so guys are not going to be as wary. Who knows? I'm not going to play him. I do like Marvin Jones from the standpoint of volume and targets, but he is going to have Denzel Ward on him playing against Cleveland. I like Jalen Waddle. Decent matchup against Buffalo. He's probably not going to. Trey White is still hurt, so we don't know exactly what's going to go on. Tua seem to like him. They have a report from Alabama. Take a shot. I think he has a good chance to have 6 for 100 and a touchdown, which 22 fantasy points, full PPR. I'll take that every day.
Big day. That might be more than David Johnson.
Probably will. Yeah, this is a good question. There's a lot of mid-tier wide receivers here. It looks like the guy that submitted this question is MG Vet 15. Good name. Who's that? I wonder who that is. So yeah, I think a lot of mid-tier guys here. I don't think it's tough. It's a lottery. It's a lottery ticket, a dart throw if you want. But I think I'm gonna go Marvin Jones this week. I think the Jags are gonna be down against the Broncos. So they're gonna have to throw just like last week. Marvin Jones had, I think, 9 targets last week, which is great volume. He scored a late garbage time touchdown, and there's no reason that can't happen again this week. So I think I like Marvin Jones. Although the Jags did not look good at all last week, I can understand playing someone like Waddle, but I just think that Jones has the job, and I think Trevor Lawrence is going to sling that rock, and I'm not sure that the same will be true for Tua. So I just think the volume combined with the fact that they're going to be down, they're going to have that game script, is going to be good for Marvin Jones. So I'd play him.
Yeah, I do have to say I'm a little scared. So I'm a little first. I think just kind of thinking through this question, the first kind of sub question is Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, because they're obviously both playing for the Dolphins, and just kind of who you like more in that matchup. I like Jalen Waddle over Devontae Parker. So we already kind of established that Jalen Waddle is the desirable of those two Dolphins receivers. But they are playing versus the Bills, which is a little scary for me. We have Robbie Anderson against the Saints. I feel I agree with a lot of Bryce's logic where, Robbie Anderson wasn't necessarily targeted very heavily, kind of had one play that accounted for 12.6 points last week. So you kind of can't depend on anything there. So it comes down to Marvin Jones, Jalen Waddle. I do think that the Denver defense is. This is tough for me. The game script is definitely going to be in favor of Marvin Jones, and it will be probably for Jalen Waddle too. But I just think that the Bills have the ability to shut it down totally. Whereas I don't necessarily think that's the case for the Broncos. So this one for MG Vet 15, I mean, I think he's going to sit on a little bit and probably make the decision tomorrow, a little bit of gut decision.
Just a pregame, close your eyes and send it.
But as of right now, I'd say it's really tough for me, really tough. I'd say Jalen Waddle. For now, but we'll
always trust the rookies.
Always trust the suits. Always trust the suits. I mean, if you had a team with, say, Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, like those are all late round guys that give you such value in week one. I mean, it's just incredible because people undervalue the suits. That's what happens early on. That's what happens in the draft. People don't know what to expect, and that's exactly what you want. You want high volatility at the end of the draft. So you pick up the rookies. We call them suits because in their ESPN pictures last year, they were in suits.
They're all wearing the suits.
Exactly. So get the suits in your draft, folks. That's the bottom line. But with that, we come to the conclusion of our week 2 start sit show in 2021, folks. We hope you have a good week. And hope you have a good week in general, but especially listening to our advice, a good week in fantasy. And with that, we will see you next week.